Hi everyone, in today's tutorial I'm going to teach you how to chocolate ganache your cakes for beautiful straight edges. Some of the materials you will need are acrylics. You'll need 2 of them. Most people buy them in exact size. I buy mine in ½ an inch larger because you want to have even edges, right? And a lot of people trim their cakes to do that, and I hate wasting any materials. So instead of trimming my cakes, I just buy a slightly larger acrylic and I don't need to trim. So a lot of people use cake boards as well. So if you're a little strapped on cash, you could try the method with the cake boards as well. So yes, you'll need the acrylics, 2 of them, one for the top, one for the bottom. You'll need an offset spatula. You're gonna need a bench scraper. You're gonna need a ruler, and we need this to make sure our cake is nice and balanced. And then right below the bottom acrylic, I put one of the friction pads from the 99-cent store, just so it doesn't move. And then my turntable is from IKEA. It was only $8 or $10, and it's 14 inches in diameter, so a lot of cakes fit nicely on this. And lastly, of course, you're gonna need your chocolate ganache. I put mine in these Tupperwares. It makes it easier to melt when the chocolate hardens. There are a lot of recipes for chocolate ganache. I use a 1-to-1 ratio with dark chocolate and the cream. You could use a non-dairy cream, coconut cream, heavy cream. It all depends on the regulations in your area. So again, I do a 1-to-1 ratio. Mine is dark chocolate. With white chocolate, you would probably need to do a 3-to-1 ratio, just because the fat content in the white chocolate melts faster than dark chocolate, so you want it more stabilized. Okay, so let's begin. Okay, so I went ahead and started putting a crumb coat of chocolate ganache on the cake. You just want this to be a thin layer. What this does is holds all the crumbs of the cake in place, and it just gives you a better base of chocolate to build upon. So if you pay attention to my cake, you'll see that I did not trim the sides, and they're a little uneven, but it really doesn't matter because the acrylics are going to give me a perfect depth and the chocolate will even out. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue applying my thin layer of ganache, and once I'm done with this, I'm going to let the chocolate set a little. So I'm going to pop the cake in the refrigerator for a few minutes, for 2 reasons. One, I want the chocolate to stiffen, and also I want the buttercream inside the cake to firm up. That way my cake doesn't shift around, because right now it's perfectly balanced. If it does shift around, if it's not major, you could just add up the difference of the crookedness with chocolate, which we'll see if I have to deal with that later on or not. So just finishing up my crumb coat. Okay, so the chocolate is nice and firm, and I'm just gonna make sure this is even. So I check both sides. And over here I could tell that my cake is already a little bit uneven, so I'm just gonna try to get that flat just by pushing on the cake a little bit. Okay, so now both sides are pretty centered. Alright, so chocolate is hydrophobic, which means it does not like water. And that means that if you put water on top of chocolate, it's not going to stick. So what I do, I wet the top acrylic a little bit with water. Okay, make sure your hands are clean when you do this. And I just place it over the top here. A lot of the times when I remove this, the bottom of the cake breaks off a little bit. It's not always foolproof, but don't worry about it because I end up filling the top with chocolate again. So what I do is I put my bench scraper on the board. Let's see if you guys can see this. Let me fix the camera a little bit. Okay, There we go. So you want both the top and the bottom to touch the bench scraper. So I just go around. I had some chocolate stuck here from, hold on a second. Okay. So what you want is to make sure that all around the cake, you're gonna have both the top and the bottom touching. Now that everything is centered, you're gonna just start applying your chocolate ganache. So hold the top here and just start adding a generous amount. You got your bench scraper. I always scrape off the top first. And now just align it and start scraping. So you want to keep scraping until you can see both of the acrylics. Now if you pay attention, you're going to see a lot of gaps in mine, and those are the air bubbles I was talking about. What I do is I let it set, I let the chocolate set right now, and then I apply some more ganache in those areas. So see right here, there's the air bubbles. You can see the gaps. So we're just gonna let the chocolate set for a little bit and cover those up. Okay, so I went ahead and smoothed out my edges, filled in the gaps. And now the next step, for a smaller cake, you could just go ahead with clean hands. You could go ahead and grab the sides of the firm cake. For larger cakes, I actually grab the entire cake turner and I invert the whole thing because we're going to flip the cake over now. And we're going to switch the acrylic disc with a cake board. When I took this class to learn how to chocolate ganache, my instructor kept the acrylics on the cakes and just delivered it that way. I find that to be a very unnecessary expense for everyone because you would have to charge the customer for the acrylic and you would have to keep buying one yourself. So I just switch it out with a cake board. So what I do is I heat up my knife just so that it can melt through the chocolate. And I first go along the perimeter to release the acrylic from the cake. And it just pops off. So now we're replacing that with the cake board. So I'm just going to put a little bit of chocolate ganache on the cake board to stick it to the cake. Not much. And we're going to place it over. Now remember, my acrylic is a ½ inch larger than my cake. So you're going to have some of the ganache outlining your cake board, which is totally fine for tiered cakes. Because what I do is I let this layer of ganache, which will stick out of your fondant, it's not going to get covered by the fondant, it adheres to the bottom layer, so I don't have to add anything extra to make it stick. The chocolate will just firm up on that bottom tier. So now we flip it back. And we're going to do the same on the top. Now remember I told you that sometimes the acrylic sticks to the top and it rips off some of the cake. It's annoying, and I'm sure there's a better way of doing this, but I've become used to my method. So again, just go along the perimeter. Keep your knife hot. And then, so what I'm doing is I'm heating up the knife on my stove top because I'm really close to it. So then you just insert the knife through, and if everything worked beautifully, it'll just pop like that. Perfect. So again, this happened because chocolate is hydrophobic, so it's not going to stick to water. Alright, so now you're going to melt your chocolate ganache in the microwave until it has a nice liquidy consistency, but it's not too liquidy. Because now we're going to fill up this gap. So just apply some ganache. And we already have a mark of where our top should be because that's where our acrylic marked it for us. So if the top of your cake is going to be stacked, you don't have to worry too much about making this pretty because another tier is going to go on top of it. But if this is your topmost tier, then make sure it's nice and clean and even. And sometimes this might be the most time consuming part. Now what I'm going to do is just scrape lightly on top to even it out. Again, this step sometimes takes the longest, depending on the temperature and the humidity of your kitchen. Sometimes chocolate likes to misbehave. So then I'm going to go ahead and scrape the sides to catch that excess chocolate I added. And you can see that it's taking a nice shape. So the last step to this is using our ruler to measure the balance of the cake. And wherever it's lacking height, you just add that with the chocolate. I can tell I'm going to need more chocolate here, so I'm going to go ahead and add some because I could see a dip. Okay, so there you have it. This is how I get my sharp edges, and I'm probably going to play around with this and smooth out the top a little more. But this is basically how I ganache my cakes. Everyone has their own method. This one's mine. It might not be the fastest or the easiest, but it works well for me. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and if I don't answer, it's because YouTube hasn't allowed me to. So go ahead and send me an email, which you can find in the information of this video. Alright, thanks a lot for watching.